Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode in Grand Prix Surveillance. My name is Saiduth. I'm joined today by Mohit and Aditya. And up till now, we've had a pretty exciting season, a pretty exciting start to the season. The first two races were absolute treats for the fans. Race number two, especially, you could say was perhaps the most chaotic, which we'll probably see. We hope not, but till now, that's the most chaotic race we've seen this season. And right now, we're in race number four in the weekend of the Spanish GP. But before we get into the details of that, let's take a few steps worth 5 days backwards to the Portuguese GP. Arguably, in my opinion, not exactly the most exciting race, quite mediocre, and nothing really happened. But that's just my opinion. I'd love to hear what you guys hear. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. Mohit, let's start off with you. Any thoughts? If any thoughts, do you have anything positive about the race?
Yeah, I believe what you said was correct. Last year's GP was way better than this year's. The only thing that was in talks this Grand Prix was the track limits. And secondly, there's still a little bit of conversation around Valtteri and Mercedes as well, which Toto is trying to clear that Valtteri will remain for the season as well. This was actually started in the previous Grand Prix where George Russell and Valtteri Bottas crashed. But apart from that, the only positive side that I see from this Grand Prix is watching the stint of Sergio Perez, who went long on the medium tires, 53 laps in total. So that's a commendable job, and that's the only positive I have from this Grand Prix.
You're quite rightly so, Mohit. I mean, watching Sergio Perez do that wonderful stint only made sure that these tires can do quite a bit. But yeah, in my opinion, this race was pretty much a lights to flag textbook Grand Prix, just your standard. You box in, box out, carry your own pace, and wait till the flag comes out. I think the only real incident which we had in the race was the safety car which we had in lap number three with Kimi Raikkonen, and it pretty much didn't affect the entire dynamic of the race because pretty much everyone on the grid had to pit after that. So yeah, I guess it is what it is right now. But kind of disappointed because we didn't get the race which we were so excited to see because last year we had that huge shuffle of the grid because we started on the intermediate tires and the track was damp in some places. So we actually got to see Carlos Sainz who could actually go all the way to the front during the first 10 laps and then the whole grid reshuffles after that. But either way, not too not too surprised considering we had to expect one or two of these kind of races anyway. But really disappointed to see some performances on the grid. But nevertheless, happy to also see some of the midfield teams come back up. Also happy for Ocon, who's been doing quite well in the first half of the season, who has beaten Fernando Alonso on most occasions. So that's a good sign for Ocon for having a seat. But on the other hand, Valtteri Bottas really needs to up his game because it's not going to be easy fighting Max Verstappen, let alone fighting Lewis Hamilton to win a world championship. So I guess we will see some more signs coming into the real European section of the season, which is going to start imminently. But apart from that, yeah, let's see where this takes us.
It's interesting you spoke about Ocon and Alonso. Yeah, I think one of the standout memories, one of the only main things that like implanted in my mind was the battle between Ocon, Leclerc, Sainz for a while. Then we had multiple overtakes between Ocon and Lando Norris as well in the beginning of the race. So it's great to see all these youngsters, getting out there and actually proving themselves on track in terms of raw pace and overtaking, not just in qualifying. Another thing, of course, is that the legend himself, Fernando Alonso, after returning to F1, he finally had a reasonably good race last time around. Uh, he's still not necessarily in the faster cars, so obviously he's got a long way to go to get to the podium. But I think for what it's worth, what that car can handle, he definitely pumped out maximum performance, and that's what we expect from a two-time world champion. On that note, yes, one Spaniard had a good race. The other one, Carlos Sainz, not so much. Probably got tossed over a little bit because of strategy. But speaking of the Spaniards, we're right now going into the Spanish Grand Prix. Two practice sessions have been finished as of right now, the day of recording. And Practice one, of course, is just a session to get up to speed. But practice two, of course, is the proper benchmark for what you can expect in qualifying. Of course, teams are not necessarily pushing the cars to the limits, but the track temperatures, the air temperature is very similar because it's running at the same time of day that qualifying would run today and race tomorrow. But on that note, I have a few points, some specific teams. I think we can all agree Alpine is right up there right now. I know it's only practice, but still, if these are the paces that the drivers are going to maintain, Alpine could potentially be up there for a podium, which could be up for grabs if someone crashes out throughout the race. What are your thoughts on that? It's a team that started off pretty bad in testing, but is now really pushing, and going up there.
Yeah, so Alpine has seen a lot of senior management changes, and as they've rebranded themselves from Renault to Alpine as well. So initially it wasn't a good start for the team, but now they're improving continuously. So that's a good given thing. Apart from that, they've got a two-time world champion back again. So we can only hope for the best from this Grand Prix for Alpine. But I feel McLaren are, they're on their top of the game. So we can expect a lot more from McLaren. They've got the speed, they've got the Mercedes engine, and uh, as we know, Barcelona is a track which the teams have put down a lot of laps onto, and they have got a lot of data as well. So the big teams, McLaren is counted into big teams. They're not performing well. Is the only reason, but they have got a lot of data. And when top tier teams have got a lot of data, they perform well at these tracks.
Yeah, I completely agree. Considering this is one of the tracks where teams have literally the most data because they have years of experience from testing through various temperatures, various track conditions, and whatnot. Um, yeah, this should be a place where teams should be doing their best. But coming to Alpine, maybe I think a podium is a stretch. Alpine, yes, they are showing some good performances. They are showing some good drives with Ocon and Fernando Alonso. But we said the same thing in Imola as well. Alpine was quite good, but and McLaren were nowhere. But come qualifying, Lando Norris almost snatched P3 on on qualifying day. So I'm not ruling out McLaren out of this. Plus, I don't think that a lot of teams were showing their straightforward pace. I think the only thing teams were going for during practice two were long run pay, were long run stints, and yeah, it looks more on the side that Alpine, uh, McLaren, and Ferrari do have are quite virtually nip and tuck during the long run paces on the soft tires, but we'll get to see where the mediums go. But it definitely looks like we're going to have a two-stop race, considering because if it is going to stay at the same conditions, we might see a lot of tire degradation, and yeah, I guess we might see some interesting racing because a lot of the midfield has closed up because uh, I think we just read that Aston Martin have received a new upgrade for the rear of their car. So we also seen Sebastian Vettel doing quite well, putting his car up into P8 and P11 in FP1 and FP2 respectively. So I do feel like the gap is going to reduce a little more. So we might tend to see some interesting racing, but I think in general it's going to stay the same. We might have your Mercedes, your Red Bull, maybe Ferrari, then your McLaren Alpine, and then we go on to the rest. That's my
Uh,
prediction.
I hope not. I mean, we all want, we all want spicier races, and I think this is the place where that's going to happen because we've been telling this time and again. Barcelona is the benchmark for the performance of these tires, and there's really no surprise that Pirelli have opted to go for the harder compounds because there are a lot of high energy corners over here. You need a lot of downforce, and I don't know, maybe because of Alpine's, quite eccentric airbox shape, that's probably helping them in terms of a little bit of downforce. Albeit you do have a bit of drag from that, but the downforce definitely, definitely going to be helping them through this track. And if you look at the report on Formula1.com, for the ideal lap analysis and then the ideal order that these drivers are going to be placed in, you can see that even with the current pace, with McLaren way behind, they can only potentially gain about 0.1, you know, 0.1 seconds for Ricardo and 0.14 for Norris. But the Alpines still have potential to increase their lap times, or rather cut short their lap times by another 0.3 seconds each. Now, of course, these are all statistics. They're not 100% accurate. Statistics always have a little margin of error. But this just goes to show that Alpine is still potentially not reaching their limits, right? You see this even with, Vettel and Stroll. Again, by the looks of it, it looks like the top 5 teams are going to be Mercedes, Red Bull, Alpine, AlphaTauri, and Ferrari. But Aston Martin is right up there, and arguably they have faster pace than Aston Martin has arguably faster pace than Alpha Tauri for the race. So I think there's going to be a fierce battle for those last final few points. Everything is going to depend on the pit stops, I think. We've seen this happen in the past. We've seen this happen in 2012. Excellent strategy calls with Williams, and that's what put Pastor Maldonado way up there in the front. It's going to be a strategy game from my point of view. I think it's definitely strategy and also tire conservation. If you're not careful here, if the track is super hot, if you hit those new yellow curbs that they've bolted onto the track, you're going to destroy your race. So it's actually a very, very tight track. And moving on to the tightness of the track, there is a new change in one of the turns in the track. Would one of you like to go ahead and explain that to the viewers? Turn number 10, I believe, right? Turn number 10 has been changed using the old MotoGP layout.
Yeah, so we're using the MotoGP layout, which I think is quite nice, because I think a lot of problems which we faced in the back was that there was no overtaking. So a lot of people would come up and be like, this race is boring, it doesn't give us a lot of action. But I think a lot of that revolved around the fact that the back straight, which we have after turn number 7, didn't really wasn't really big enough to actually put cars in overtake, because right after that you have a sharp left-hander going up the last part of the track. But yeah, maybe you might see some really adventurous overtakes coming in out of the side. But as you say, this is really a strategy game. You could win a race in the pit stop, but you could also win a race on track, because the tire degradation is going to be quite ridiculous, because we've already seen signs that the left front is taking a lot of damage. And now, since you have curbs which are literally on that side of the track, you put 2 wheels on that and you're going to have so much consequences towards, let's say, the end of the race. Some might even try to do a one stop on the hards. Let's see how that goes. But we've seen Max Verstappen lose a couple of very good laps during FP1 and FP2 just because he put 2 wheels on those curbs. So I think the damage just takes its toll, and once it reaches its cliff, it's just going to drop. So this is going to be a lot more interesting than we think, but we haven't really seen the full extent of the way the tires and the track performed together. So let's wait till FP3 so that we can find out more data from long runs on the medium tires, because as of now, I think we've only seen some stints on the soft tires, I guess. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, talking about the tires conservation part, I believe the Red Bulls and Alpha Tauris are designed as such that they don't get much a tire load on their cars. So I see a good race for Red Bull plus Alpha Tauri. We haven't been talking about Alpha Tauri. They have finished 6th and 7th in the FP2. And Yuki Tsunoda, the new rookie, is also gaining some confidence, and that's a very good sign for the team as well. Pierre Gasly already knows the car, and I feel he's been gaining some confidence as well. But it looks like, for me, I'm going to say that Alpha Tau, it looks a good chance for them that they're going to score double points finish here, and all the best to them.
Yeah, I agree with you, Mohit, because I think when we're coming to this track, Yuki Tsunoda has raced here in his previous feeder series races. So I think he brings a lot of confidence, knowing that he is probably racing on the same battleground as he has been in the past. So I think that obviously gives him a lot of confidence. And I think Yuki Tsunoda is a very good driver. He's had good moments and bad moments in the past few races, but I think this is one race where he can actually show that he's he is built to do the job. Yeah, as you say, AlphaTauri seems like they're in a very good place. I think they've always seemed in very good places this entire season. They just often were in the wrong place at the wrong time. Uh, Bad safety cars, rain, whatnot. Um, so yeah, apart from
I,
that, let's
I don't
just
know.
let's just see how things go.
I think Portimao was quite an uneventful race for AlphaTauri. We hardly saw any footage of them, really, any broadcasting footage or really any news of what they're really doing. They were just kind of there in no man's land, 20, 30 seconds to the front and behind. I don't know. But actually, more specifically to this track, I don't know, the point that you were talking about, Chaco, I have to differ with you over there. Firstly, FP3 is going to be at a slightly colder condition. So if they're going to run a harder compound, which is a medium compound in a colder condition, that's really not the right
Yeah,
operating temperature for it. Generally, you want to run harder compounds in hotter conditions, simply because they need to reach a certain temperature to get performance. But maybe yeah, in terms of long runs, yes, they can do a long run with the mediums on FP3 in FP3 and perhaps get a little bit of insight to how the tire degradation is going to go on. But I highly doubt
yeah,
it's going to
that's
be a
what I
real
was talking
benchmark.
about.
Yeah, uh, FP3 is mostly going to be about getting your setup right because after that, park ferme rules come into account. You can't really do anything beyond that. So
Yeah,
FP3 is
agreed,
just going to be that.
agreed.
And also
Fair enough.
regarding turn number 10, despite it being a faster corner overall, that's actually going to prevent some overtakes, I believe, because of course the DRS rate is marginally longer, let's say about 10, 20 meters. But even those 10 and 20 meters can have a big impact, but only if you have enough runoff area, right? Now, even though the outside of turn number 10 has runoff area, it's still going to be a pretty fast corner. So unless the driver you're putting pressure on, overheats the front right tire, it's going to be very unlikely to be able to overtake over there. In my opinion, the only places you can really overtake are maybe into turn number 1 if you get a good run. We've seen that happen multiple times, and also into turn number 5, which is that left-hander. After the long right-hand Repsol curve, you've got the downhill left-hander. That's where a lot of blue flag overtakes happen, but that's also a place where you can lock up because it's a downhill corner. So there are arguably only a couple of places to overtake, but I hope I'm proven wrong. I hope what you say is right. If we get more overtakes down the back straight, that's going to be more fun because this is a great circuit for driving, but not necessarily the best circuit for on-track overtakes. It's going to be a pit stop game more or less.
I don't know. Let's see, man. I think okay. I think a few years ago the main argument was, let's use the MotoGP curve. Let's use the MotoGP curve at turn number 10 to see how the race goes. Then the argument was, let's take off the chicane and let's see how the race goes. Uh, okay, fine. I mean, this is a step. Let's see how it goes. And these cars are really not showing the true indicative pace. Like the Red Bull and the AlphaTauri were 11K off each other's pace. So I am sure the Hondas and the Mercedes and the Ferraris are going to pump up their engines a little more. So you may say a vast speed differential, but I think most of these cars are designed to gain performance in some particular parts of the track. Whether you gain your time on turn number 10, let's see, and maybe that does some justice for the racing. But yeah, I think the main goal for teams is to grab as much as points as possible, and this is the best place for them to actually get it for a lot of teams.
I feel the correct team to talk about is now Ferrari. Ferrari are inching closer to their aims right now, and they've shown good simulations of qualifying place plus the race pace as well. So, I mean, this can be at least a top five finish for Ferrari in this race as well, considering the race simulations that they've shown. What do you guys think about that?
Um, no, look, man. See, Fer- Ferrari need to make sure that they get to keep both the drivers close to each other, because the only way they can actually get closer to that P3 is to maximize the number of points. I get it. They tried to do something quite adventurous in Portimao where they wanted to split the strategy and see where they would land up. But you'd often see this happening with Ferrari throughout the years. They often mess up a strategy because they think this will do the alternative, and then they land up in a position where they don't want, often losing races, often losing podiums. Uh, Here you have two very good drivers in the likes of Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc, who often don't really make a lot of mistakes. So this is the best place for them to honestly come and grab maximum potential. And I think, look, it's not a talk about data anymore. I mean, these guys are really virtually nip and tuck with each other. They just have to make sure that they can either get in between the Red Bulls, or they have to basically split the rest of the field. And I think that is something they can do. It all really depends on how much the tire degrades them. That's honestly what I think is going to happen at the end of the race. It
I
I
mean,
depends
think
on
for
the
my
a fight,
tires.
yeah,
yeah,
side word.
yeah. No, see, my outlook to this is Ferrari, at least in the recent years, have always been average at best in quali, and then somehow during the race, at least definitely Charles Leclerc in the past few years has somehow managed to jump a few spots, gain some positions. But I think the biggest issue right now, again, we can't really say because we're just observing as spectators, but I think maybe the thing that they're struggling with is their setup itself. It's always been an issue with car balance for Ferrari. Um, so unless they get their setup right on the money, they're really not going to be able to stay in that top 10. Not really top 10, at least in the top six, right? Because what they're trying to do is get the third place. So they need to at least be fifth and sixth for getting the maximum points for their class per se. So because of that, yeah, I don't know if they have the same pace as what they've done in practice. If all the teams maintain the pace they've got right now, we're gonna have a super exciting race because right now the pack is completely shuffled. At least from P4 onwards, they're not the same people that you'd expect. One could only hope that this is the case. But my prediction is Ferrari is definitely going to struggle over time throughout the race. Let's just hope they do well because Carlos Sainz does have a record of consistently getting points in his home GP. So let's hope it stays that way. But one can really only hope. Honestly speaking, I can't tell anything about Ferrari right now. Maybe until the race actually starts tomorrow. Ferrari's practice pace
Oh,
has never been indicative of anything ever in the past.
Funny that you
yeah.
mentioned their setup. So as you know that they're heavily dependent on reducing drag in their car. So how do you think that plans out here in Barcelona? How
I don't
will
know.
it help
See,
them, or
depending
will
on
it be
downforce levels,
a
I don't
negative
think
point for them?
reducing downforce is the way to go. And that is definitely not what Ferrari should be doing unless they're severely underpowered. Because, okay, granted, both overtaking zones are at the end of long straights, right? So that means you need maximum gain in drag reduction. However, the rest of the track needs a lot of downforce. Turn number 1 and 2 are quite hilly, but you need a lot of downforce. Turn three, if you don't have the right balance, oversteering is maybe not too much of an issue. But if you understeer, if you overload that front tire, it could potentially explode. We've seen this happen with Hamilton, I believe, back in 2010, if I'm not mistaken, in the Spanish GP. So you don't want that happening in the last lap. It's either Hamilton or Webber. I'm sorry, I don't remember. But yeah, yeah, I don't know. I think teams that are underpowered and are compromising on their downforce and drag for this race, compromising on downforce and reducing drag, they're going to struggle a lot. This is definitely, and this is one of the main reasons why Mercedes has been so dominant in the Barcelona circuit over the past few years. They have the best engine, and right now they arguably don't have the best engine. So if Red Bull can up their game, they could potentially win. I don't know. Red Bull is an aero car. Merc is a mechanically stable car. So it's going to be a proper cat and mouse game for this race.
Yeah, I mean,
Apparently both the top tier teams are neck to neck as well. So we have seen in the last two Grand Prix that the strategies they're running is they have their ace driver going for the win or the podium, and they let the second driver obstruct the other driver of the other team as well. So in terms of strategy, Chaco, what do you think? Is this a good strategy to work out, or does it spoil the second driver's race?
are you asking me because I'm a Ferrari fan? Because that was the Ferrari master plan. but man, look, you got to get maximum points, and if you think that obstructing your nearest competitor is the only way to get that, let's say, 1 or 2 points, I don't think you should do it. You should probably let the cars race, and you should just maximize the amount of performance you can get, because it just it just ruins the morale of a driver. Uh, Forget the fact that you're racing. Let's say someone like Sebastian Vettel when you're Kimi Raikkonen, or I mean, Kimi doesn't give a shit probably, but let's say Sebastian Vettel when he's racing with Leclerc, or let's say Valtteri Bottas when he's racing with Lewis Hamilton. I mean, the guy is in a car which he can possibly win, but being put in a situation where you're just told, uh, do it for the team, take one for the team, is probably not the best rhetoric. I know it's more like doing something noble at the end of the day, but it's not racing. It's not what we want to see, man. I want to see Nico Rosberg, Lewis Hamilton battling close to each other. I want to see a Vettel Alonso type of era. I mean, we need to see some real action, not some kind of race where you have to like compromise just because you want to win. You want to win the championship with 3-4 races to spare. I mean, come on, man.
I don't know, man. I've always been against team orders because those kind of interfere, especially within the team. Okay, if you're telling a driver to do something to defend from an external parameter, then it makes sense. But yeah, doing it within the team, it has to be more of an understanding between the drivers. One of the drivers knows that they're on an alternate strategy and they're slower than the other. They move out of the way because that's the more noble thing to do. It's not. It's. I don't think it's really in the books for a team to get involved in that. But like you said, we need battles. We need on-track battles. The golden era of F1 for me is from 2010 to 13. Not because of Red Bull dominance, not because of Vettel dominance, but simply because we actually had some really, really, really good races. 2010 and 2012 were benchmarks for what a season could potentially be. When was the last time we went into the final race with four drivers battling it out, four drivers mathematically potential champions by the end of that race? When did we go into a race where it's all decided on that final safety car wet race, that final corner? It's nightmarish memories back to 2008. I'm a big Felipe Massa fan, so I don't want to think about that. But yeah, when was the last time we had that? It's been almost a decade, man. 2016 was a lot of fun. 2016, the final race was great. If we can go till that limit at the end of this season, that is perfect. I don't think teams will be enforcing any sort of team orders right now. We're too early into the season, and it seems like most teams, apart from maybe Mercedes and Red Bull, all the other teams, both drivers seem to be almost equally matched. So it's still too early to
But
say that.
yeah, but I think a lot of teams do take this into account when they don't see that the drivers are performing up to the mark. Perez hasn't really been up there on pace. I think we've seen it in FP1, FP2 this race. I mean, this weekend as well. I think he's 3 tenths or 4 tenths off Max Verstappen's pace on the same set of tires. Valtteri has, well, been really close to Lewis on qualifying. I mean, I agree, the man has a 1 lap pace, but come race day, Lewis just checks out. So I think Mercedes are keeping an eye on this, and they know that, well, you get the podium, but they also want you to also battle it out with Hamilton, or not just give it to him in a platter, because because there are a lot of people in the line who are willing to take up that seat, and it's only a matter of time until George Russell or anybody else comes up and takes up that seat in Mercedes. I think fortunately now, Ferrari in Ferrari we can see that Leclerc and Sainz are well, nominally close to each other during the races, albeit a little messed up strategy calls by the team. But yeah, I don't agree with team orders in most ways, but you really have to be up there if you really need to have the benefit of the doubt. That's my opinion.
I feel that the drivers now need a little bit of indiscipline in racing right now, because right now they're too disciplined listening to team orders and stuff, and that doesn't count for good racing. If you can just remember the 2013 Malaysian Grand Prix, where the Red Bull team had asked Vettel to stay behind Weber, but he didn't want to, and then uh, that there's something called as multi 21 strategy
Multi
that didn't go
21.
well. Yeah, and that's what made a Grand Prix very exciting, and it was spoken about days after the Grand Prix was over as well. So I think we need something of that sorts as well.
Yeah, multi 21, some memories in the past. Funny enough, we never saw multi 1-2. So seems like it was always in Vettel's favor. Unfortunately, we are kind of strapped for time at the moment. So let's just quickly wrap this up. Chaco and Mohit, we will again be catching up, of course, after the Spanish GP. But until then, we're going to have qualifying and race. So what are your final predictions? Who do you think are going to win these? Who's going to be the top three for both for quali and race?
I don't know. I want to say Valtteri Bottas because he's not one in Spain. I think this should be probably one of the races which he should win. Okay. I mean, he's had good performances here, so might as well. Come on, man, do it. Let's do it. I'm rooting for you, Valtteri. Don't disappoint.
I feel it's going to be a classic race. So we'll have Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen, and then Valtteri Bottas following.
Okay. And my prediction is the order is going to be the quali order is going to be Bottas, Verstappen, Hamilton. Verstappen will get the jump on Bottas on lap 1, but ultimately Hamilton's going to steal the show. So I think it's again going to be a Ham ver Bot, but quali is going to be Bot ver Ham. So let's see. And I think Vettel's going to get into the points this time. I know he will. I hope he will. Anyways, cool. On that note, let's end it here, guys. Thanks so much for joining us today, and thank you, viewers, for watching this. But we all three of us are going to catch up, of course, after the Spanish GP. So until then, take care and stay safe. This is Saiduth signing off. Chaco, Mohit, any last words?
No, only look forward to the qualifying today.